Hello everyone, this is amanpreet from Guru Nanak Dev University and I'm a legal intern at LEXIS and Company. So today we are going to talk about what are the rights of the tenant. So first of all, we have to know that what is Rent Control Act. So basically the Rent Control Act offers security of tenure to the tenants and restricts the landlord's power to evict tenants. So then comes the right of tenant. So basically a tenant has the right to a house that is fit to be lived in. Unsafe conditions such as holes in the floor or plaster coming down from the ceiling, bad wiring and the like situations are considered to be unfit. So it is the landlord's responsibility to see that the house meets the minimum standards of accommodation. So as per the law, a tenant should be fully informed of all the contents, or we can say terms and conditions of the contract, and only upon the consent of the tenant can the agreement be signed by both the parties, which then becomes a valid document. Then comes that both the parties will have to maintain a copy each of the agreement all the time, and the tenant is also entitled to have appropriate contact information, like we can see telephone numbers, email addresses, postal addresses, etc. And the landlords can be contacted at any time of or at any point of time. So the tenant has the right to privacy also. The landlord cannot enter whenever in the premise whenever he wants or whenever he requires. The landlord cannot walk into the house without the prior permission or information unless there is a true emergency like a fire or a flood in the bathroom, or a very specific situation where he needs to interfere in that premise. And then it is considered unlawful for a landlord to disconnect essential services such as electricity and water, or restrict a tenant from using common amenities for recovery of rental dues or for other reasons. So if a landlord executes any such brutalities, the tenant can approach the rent control court to restore essential services and act against the landlord. So the landlord is restricted from doing such things or such unessential, or we can say torturous things. So if the landlord harasses the tenant by asking to evict the premises without any lawful reason and fails to accept rent, the tenant can first issue a notice in writing to the landlord asking for details of a bank into which the tenant can directly deposit the rent to the credit of the landlord. Then if the landlord fails to respond in such cases, then the rent can be sent by money order to the landlord also. So if this attempt to pay the rent also fails, then the tenant must immediately file an application before a rent control court to deposit further rents in the court. And in that situation, the rent control court will interfere in such matters. And then comes as far we can say regarding eviction, or we can say eviction is concerned, the landlord would have to file a petition before the competent rent control court to seek eviction of the tenant. So under the Rent Control Act, landlords can evict tenants only under specific grounds, which include willful default in rent payment, subletting without the prior consent, causing a nuisance, or when the landlord himself requires premises for personal occupation. Then we can say that the tenant is also entitled to reimbursement for any repairs that he or she carries out that are the landlord's responsibility. In such case also the tenant is entitled to reimbursement. Then the tenant is entitled to have visitors to stay overnight or for short periods unless specifically forbidden in the tenancy agreement. So it depends upon the conditions or rules of the tenancy agreement or the agreement which they have signed. Then the landlord must be informed if the tenant has an extra person moving in. The tenant is entitled to a certain amount of notice of the termination of the tenancy. The landlord must return the deposit to the tenant at the end of the lease term with interest set by a statute. Then we can say that the legal heirs of the tenant are also tenants and is entitled to receive all the protection available to the tenant under the Rent Control Act of various states. However, it is a choice of the legal heir if he wants to renew the contract with the landlord and continue to stay. And it also will depend upon the conditions of the contract which they have signed. So the tenant is entitled to refer any disputes to the Residential Tenancies Board, that is RTB, without being penalized for doing so. Other than that, a tenant has a right to a copy of any register entry held by the RTB dealing with tenancy. All homes for rent must have a building energy rating, that is BER, stating how energy efficient the home is. This will help the tenant make an informed choice when comparing properties to rent. It is relevant to note that in the case of contractual tenancy, which is granted for a specific period, the landlord will not be entitled to apply for the possession of the building for his own bona fide additional accommodation. However, it is necessary for the tenant to establish contractual tenancy under registered rental agreement, where registration is mandated. So this was all about the rights of the tenant under Rent Control Act, or we can say an overview of rights of tenant. I hope you like this video. If you like this video, put a thumbs up on this video, and also don't forget to like and subscribe the channel LEXCLIQ. This does not solicit any promotion or advertisement as per the guidelines of the Bar Council of India. It is for education purpose only. Thank you.